Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy Mother's Day. My topic this morning is a look at God. Do you ever wonder what God looks like? Do you know or even have any idea what he looks like? Would you like to know what he looks like? I feel like the boy in the comic you just received. Of course you don't know what God looks like. I haven't given this sermon yet. Let's start with Exodus 20, verses 2 to 5. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make yourself an idol in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. Idolatry. Isaiah preaches against such idols in Isaiah 40. He starts out by saying, all who make idols are nothing, and the are worthless. Those who would speak up for them are blind. They are ignorant to their own shame. Isaiah then goes on to point out how utterly illogical and dumb it is to have a piece of wood, use half of it for fuel, and make a god, and then worship out of the other half. Then in the 18th chapter, verses 6 and 7, he summarizes his argument. Some pour out gold from their bags and weigh out silver on the scales. They hire a goldsmith to make it into a god, and then they bow down and worship it. Then they lift it to their shoulders and carry it. They set it up in its place, and there it stands. From that spot it cannot move. Though one cries out to it, it does not answer. It cannot save them from his troubles. The problem did not go away in New Testament times. Paul at Romans 1:23 and 25 wrote about those who exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like mortal men and birds and animals and reptiles. They exchanged the truth of God for a lie and worshiped and served created things rather than the Creator, with its forever praised. Secondly, the first type of idolatry is worship of false gods or images of their gods. The second type of idolatry is the worship of the true God by images. The second commandment states not to have an idol or image of anything in heaven. Does this mean even of God himself? Let's look at a couple of Old Testament examples. The first is in Exodus 32. It occurs even while Moses is in the mountain receiving these very commandments. Verse 1 says, When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, "Come, make us gods who will go before us. For this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him." So Aaron had them bring him all their gold earrings and made them into an idol of a golden calf. Then they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you out of Egypt." Verse 5 tells us that when Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, "Tomorrow there will be a festival to the Lord." Please note that the calf was not a new god. It was the God who brought them out of Egypt. He said there would be a festival to the Lord. And he uses God's name, Yahweh, Jehovah God. There would be a festival to Jehovah God. The making of the golden calf was Aaron's attempt to satisfy the people's desire to have a God they could see. He identifies the calf with the Lord their God. But God condemned the act as idolatry. The second example is in the book of Daniel, chapter 3. 3:1 says, "King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold, 90 feet high and 9 feet wide, and set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon." The command goes out that everyone is to bow down and worship this huge image of gold that Nebuchadnezzar made. 3, 5, and 6 say, "As soon as you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, pipes, and all kinds of music, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace." Of course, Daniel's 3 faithful friends do not bow down. 3:13 and 15 tell us, "Furious with rage, Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego." So these 3 men were brought before the king, and Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you will not serve my gods or worship the image of gold I have set up? Now when you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipes, and all kinds of music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image that I made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand?" Poor Nebuchadnezzar is furious. He doesn't understand. He has accepted the fact that Daniel and these 3 did not worship his gods. But now these 3 would not even bow down to the golden image that he had made. Why was Nebuchadnezzar so furious? Why does he seem surprised by their action? Let me suggest that the golden image was meant by Nebuchadnezzar to be an image of their God. Note, "You refuse to serve my gods or worship the image of gold I have set up." Remember, Nebuchadnezzar had a dream of a statue with a head of gold. Daniel told Nebuchadnezzar he was a head of gold. Why would they not worship this image? So he asks, what God is left to rescue you now? Daniel 3:16-18. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to save it from it, and he will rescue us from your hand. O king, but even if he does not, we want you to know, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold that you have set up. They made it clear that Nebuchadnezzar did not make an image of the God they served. Their God was different. There could be no image made by man's hands to honor him. But just what is wrong with trying to make an image of God? What is wrong in trying to honor him in such a way? Why does God denounce it in such strong terms? What is the danger in such images? Number one, images dishonor God. They obscure his story. Isaiah 40:18. To whom then will you compare God? What image will you compare him to? Calvin said, a true image of God is not to be found in all the world, and hence his glory is defiled and his truth corrupted by the lie whenever he is set before our eyes in a visible form. Therefore, to devise any image of God is itself impious, because by the corruption his majesty is adulterated, and he is figured to be other than what he is. Aaron's attempt to represent God by a bull image of great strength and Nebuchadnezzar's 90-foot tall statue of gold both fell way short of the true glory and majesty of God. It is a human weakness that attempts to make an image of God. Secondly, images mislead us. They convey false ideas about God. The very inadequacy of any image of God perverts our thoughts about him and plants in our minds limiting errors about his nature, character, and will. The same is true about any mental images we may have about God. Imagining God in our heart, in our heads, can be just as dangerous as making a physical image of him. Let me give you some examples. I like to think of God as the great mathematician. That limits him. It makes him an image of human characteristic. I don't like to think of God as a judge, just as a father. That denies part of who God is, what the Bible tells us about him. 1 Corinthians 1:21. The world, through its wisdom, did not know God. Neither can we through our own wisdom. There is, however, one figure on earth that the Bible explicitly calls the image of God. This is the image other than man. This is none other than mankind, both male and female. Genesis 1:26 and 27. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. Perfect man was the perfect image of God. Adam and Eve represented God. They were created in his image. Genesis 5:1 and 2. This is the written account of Adam's life. When God created man, he made him in the likeness of God. He created them male and female and blessed them. And when they were created, he called them man. Adam and Eve were created perfect in the image of God. But they sinned and lost their perfection. They were no longer images of God. God is perfect. Man became imperfect, sinful. He could no longer be the image of God. Not until another perfect man came on earth could God be seen. Jesus Christ was perfect, sinless, and the image of God. In him, people could get a look at God. John 14:6-9. Jesus answered, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you really knew me, you would know my Father as well. From now on, you do know him and have seen him." Philip said, "Lord, show us the Father, that will be enough for us." Jesus answered, "Don't you know me, Philip, even after I have been among you such a long time? Anyone who has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, 'Show us the Father'?" Jesus was the image of his Father. I am the image of my father, Bill Urbaniak. I am not the only image of my father. My brother Wayne is also an image of my father. Years ago, on the West Coast, they had conferences. And one year, they would invite me to speak at that conference. The next year, they would invite Wayne to speak at that conference. And then it was my turn again. And I thought everybody out there knew us well and had us straight. But then one year, somebody came up to me and complained about something that my brother Larry had done the year before. There is definitely a family resemblance. When we become Christians, we are born again. We gain spiritual life. We become children of God. Do we bear his resemblance? Do we look more and more like him the more we grow? Do others see God when they look at us? We are part of the family of God. Does the family likeness appear in us? Ephesians 4:22-24. You were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. we were taught to put off the old self of our former way of life. It was corrupted by deceitful desires. Have we gotten rid of these deceitful desires? Do we have a new attitude of mind? Romans 12, 1 and 2. Therefore I urge you, brothers, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Transform your very mind. Transform the way you think. Be changed from within by the power of God's Spirit. Ephesians 4:24. Put on the new self created to be like a God. This is the new creation and one made in the image of God. The first commandment given man by God is in Genesis 1:28. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and every other living creature that moves on the ground." Victor Horowitz wrote in the Bible Review, "Mankind is God's vicar on earth, and as such should look like and behave like God. The divine commandment to be fruitful and multiply is in fact an order to replicate the divine image throughout the world. This could appear to contradict the second commandment of the Decalogue. In order for it not to be so, man must take care not to place himself above God, not to replace God with his own self as the object of worship. Be fruitful and multiply. This was a command given to perfect man to replicate the divine image. But mankind lost that perfection, lost the opportunity to take God's image throughout the world. But we now are told by Jesus in Matthew 5:48, "Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect." Is this a realistic goal? You know, there's a debate about what it means, whether it's perfect or mature. 1 Corinthians 2:8. We do, however, speak a message of wisdom among the mature, but not the wisdom of this age or the rulers of this age who are coming to nothing. It's the same word in the NIV. It says mature, and in the King James Version, it says perfect. Maybe there should be no debate. As we meet mature, perfection becomes our goal. We cannot be fully mature until perfected. 2 Corinthians 13:11. Finally, brothers, goodbye. Aim for perfection. Listen to my appeal. Be of one mind, live in peace, and the God of love and peace will be with you. Perfect your lives. Do it so you can replicate the divine image, be changed into the likeness of God. 2 Corinthians 3:18. And we, who with unveiled faces all reflect the Lord's glory, are being transformed into his likeness with ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. King James Version says, "But we all, with open face, beholding as in a glass the glory of God, are changed into the same image from glory to glory, even as by the Spirit of the Lord." Note, in the same image of God. Listen now to Colossians 3, 1-10. "Since then you have been raised with Christ, set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things above, not on earthly things. For you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory. Put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature: sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed, which is idolatry. Because of these, the wrath of God is coming. You used to walk these ways in the life you once lived. But now you must rid yourself of such things as these: anger, rage, malice, slander, and filthy language from your lips. Do not lie to each other, since you have taken off your old self with its practices, and have put on the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge in the image of its Creator." Did you get that? The new self is to be in the image of its Creator. Others should see God when they look at us.